I'm Mark Golub, and in the news, another unconscionable act of war by the corrupt, oppressive, repressive Hamas regime in Gaza, in a clear violation of every standard of international law. Since Wednesday, August 8th, Hamas has fired more than 200 rockets into southern Israel, mainly falling in Sderot, one even falling in Beersheba, 25 miles from the Gaza border. Most of the Hamas rockets fell harmlessly. 30 of them were shot out of the sky by Israel's Iron Dome. But at least 19 Israelis suffered injury. An Israeli woman was critically wounded. Dozens of Israelis have been treated for panic attacks, children and adults. Imagine how we would feel if rockets were fired at our homes, frightening our children to death, injuring or killing a family member or friend. And imagine this. Imagine the outrage people would have if Vladimir Putin started lobbing rockets into Crimea or Ukraine or any Baltic country that was once part of the Soviet Union. How would America and how would Western Europe respond to Russian rockets? Or how about Korea? What if North Korea started lobbing rockets into South Korea? Not nuclear weapons, just 200 rockets into South Korea. If Russia did it, if North Korea did it, we'd be on the brink of world war. The world condemnation would be loud and clear and unequivocal. So what's the difference here? How dare Hamas fire rockets into Israel? It's not the first time. Israel has taken action against Gaza before for this egregious Hamas assault. And Israel now is threatening to once again go into Gaza to cripple the Hamas leadership. But where's world opinion? Where's a condemnation of Hamas? Hamas claims Israel has, quote, attacked Gaza. Does any thinking person buy that charge against Israel? Israel has fired back at Hamas forces who shot at Israeli soldiers from behind the Gaza fence. If you shoot at soldiers, a response is not an attack. Yet Hamas used the IDF's return fire as pretext for launching an immoral and heinous rocket attack. And every rabbi in America, every rabbi, should be speaking out in support of Israel and in condemnation of Hamas. And so should every Jewish leader, and every Jewish newspaper should be editorializing in support of Israel, and the Trump administration and the entire American media should be doing the same. Hamas is an evil, corrupt, repressive regime oppressing the Palestinians of Gaza and waging an unjustified war against the sovereign nation state of the United Nations, the state of Israel. It is a moral outrage. Israel has every right to do everything possible to defend itself and the Israeli people from rocket attacks. And we should all be standing with the Israeli people in this horrific times. And of course, it's all about the Israeli people. To help us understand the Israeli perspective, I'm so pleased to be joined on our JBS phones now from Tel Aviv by Ari Gross, the outstanding military correspondent for the Times of Israel. Judah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
By the way, Judah, you already have won my heart because your middle name, Ari, is my son's name. I am very partial to the name, so I'm thrilled to have you on JBS. Judah, can you first bring the JBS audience up to date on the latest developments regarding this Hamas attack? It's late at night in Israel right now, but tell us what's going on and tell us what you know about the IDF's response to what's going on?
So throughout the day, beginning on Wednesday evening, there's been there have been approximately a little bit less than 200 or so rockets and mortar shells fired at southern Israel. In response to that, the Israeli military has conducted airstrikes throughout the Gaza Strip, targeting upwards of 150 sites belonging to Hamas and other terror groups in the Palestinian enclave. This has included some tunnels, some training facilities, some weapon manufacturing facilities, and most recently this evening it included a 5-story building in a sort of upscale, I guess, neighborhood of Gaza City that the military says is being used by Hamas's internal security unit, and which many people are seeing as a clear message by the army that it will not hold back on conducting strikes in these kinds of populated areas. Until now, most of the targets that have been hit have been sort of on the outskirts of cities, but this is very much sort of in the heart of Gaza City and in a sort of a nicer neighborhood to boot. So far there have been 3 Palestinians killed in these strikes, one of them being a Hamas fighter who was killed reportedly while he was in the midst of launching rockets at Israel. In addition, the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry reports that a pregnant woman and her daughter were also killed. The IDF hasn't confirmed that. They haven't really commented on the case, but they've said repeatedly that they only have been targeting military sites. So yeah, on the Israeli side, as you mentioned, there have been a number of injuries.
Yes.
It's slightly difficult to get an exact count because you have some people that can be hit by shrapnel that you say, okay, clearly they're injured by the rocket, by the mortar shell, by whatever it is. Then you also have people who fall while running, and then the numbers get a little bit shakier about how exactly you're counting every single person. But a fair number have been brought to a number of hospitals in southern Israel. And then, as you mentioned, a number of people have suffered panic attacks. That included 2 pregnant women in the town of Sderot who went into premature labor and had to be brought into the hospital. As you mentioned, one woman was seriously injured. She was actually a Thai worker who was employed by one of the farmers in one of the communities in southern Israel. And in the meantime, the Israeli sort of response to this evening, right before we started speaking, the Security Cabinet completed a 4-hour meeting about the situation in Gaza, and the statement put out was not very specific about how Israel is going to proceed. It was basically just the IDF is going to continue taking a hard line against terrorist activities, which is sort of as vague as you can be in a situation like this.
Judah, what do you imagine the Israeli people are feeling, and what do they want now? Again, look, Sderot is in southern Israel. You're in Tel Aviv. There are people throughout Israel that are not near Gaza. To what extent do Israelis throughout the country in some way identify with the people of Sderot and feel this personally? Or to what extent do they have, they sympathize, but they don't have a visceral reaction?
I think it depends. I don't necessarily like to generalize, so it's hard to say. But there are definitely those who are, clearly tracking this, who have opinions, who are, identify with the people of Sderot and the surrounding areas. I mean, Israel is a small country, so chances are somebody who lives in these areas, or you're related to somebody who lives in these areas. So that's definitely the case. But I think for other people, you're talking about Israel, as you mentioned, has gone to war with Hamas in the Gaza Strip 3 times in the past 10 years. And I think there's something of a feeling among a lot of people of, on the one hand, sort of, oh, here we go again.
Yes.
which is, not necessarily a good situation to
Right.
be in. And the other, and sort of more taking that a step further, there's a lot of people that are sort of seeing this as a very negative thing of, why are we doing this again? I mean, why do we keep doing this? Why can't we do this better and stop having this situation? So I think there's a good deal of criticism that's being leveled against the government, especially the prime minister who's been in power for a number of years and has been presided over a number of these operations, that it's sort of, well, you've been dealing with this for so long, why don't you deal with it already?
And when Israelis say, why don't you deal with it already? And this was an issue during the last Gaza war. There was sort of a suggestion that this war would be an end to Hamas entirely, and it turned out Israel wasn't able to do that. So are you suggesting that there's a certain kind of frustration among an element of the Israeli people who are saying to the Netanyahu government, all right already, go in there and wipe them out?
So I'll say this. I think you used the word couldn't take out Hamas, and I don't think that's necessarily the right word to use. I think the right word is wouldn't.
Yes.
The Israeli military, comparatively speaking, there's no question there. The Israeli military is quite powerful. I'm not sure there's a piece of earth on this planet that a military has more information about than the IDF has about the Gaza Strip. At the same time, rooting out Hamas, which rules the Gaza Strip, which is very deeply embedded, both figuratively and literally, in the territory there, would be a very painful thing. And at the end of the day, you wind up with a situation where you don't know necessarily who's going to take over this plot of land and the 2 million people that live there, and are they going to be better than Hamas, or are they going to be worse than Hamas? And I think that's sort of what's limiting is the question of what comes next. And I don't know that the Israeli government currently has a clear enough vision of what it wants to have happen there, that it wants to get rid of Hamas and make that happen. And in terms of when I say people saying take care of this already, obviously there are some people, more historically speaking, more on the right, who are saying that in a sense of go in and just, get rid of Hamas. As aggressively as you have to. And then there's also people, again, more, historically speaking on the left, who are saying reach an agreement with this, as much as they are a terror group, internationally recognized and completely by their actions, they're the sovereign group within the Gaza Strip. Reach some sort of agreement with them, if not obviously I don't think a peace treaty is happening anytime soon, but some kind of lasting ceasefire agreement, give certain economic incentives and, try to do some kind of exchange of prisoners, because Hamas obviously is holding on to 2 Israeli civilians and the remains of 2 fallen soldiers.
Yes.
So to work out some kind of agreement in that way and sort of at least put this issue to bed, so that both within Israel and within the Gaza Strip, we can all collectively move on from this fighting that doesn't ultimately help anybody.
Okay. I want to push you now because you have touched on what I think is the most important issue that comes out of any kind of conflict with Hamas in Gaza. Judah, what do you think Hamas wants? What could Israel do, say? What policy could Israel either implement or eliminate that would satisfy Hamas, that Hamas would say, okay, now we won't throw rockets into Sderot. Now we won't build tunnels into Israel to send our operatives in to slit the throats of Israeli civilians. Now we will live, not necessarily, as you say, not necessarily in peace, but without violence. What does Hamas want Israel to do that would get us to that point?
So I think as I said, a peace treaty is not happening anytime soon. What would make Hamas happy? What would make Hamas happy is for Israel to no longer exist, for them to be able to take over the entire country, including the West Bank, and call it a day, and this is now Palestine, and there's no more Israel. I mean, that would make Hamas very happy, I think.
But that
However, these are also incredibly shrewd In my opinion, and from what I see, I don't think I'm really going far in terms of having an opinion on this, but some of the most shrewd, calculating, and cynical people on the planet who have no problem making the people that they're supposedly responsible for suffer in order to help their hand in their negotiations. These are not nice folks by any stretch of the imagination. They are very sort of selfish and looking out for their best interests. So are there certain economic incentives that Israel could bring to the Gaza Strip to make that to sort of sweeten the pot and to, if not bring things down to zero, to at least bring them down to a much, much lower level than what they're at now? I'm inclined to believe that there is. I don't know if there's sufficient political will in Israel, or obviously within Hamas, to reach such an accord. These negotiations are, in fact, ongoing. I mean, that is one of the ridiculous things is that while there's this large exchange of rocket fire and mortar shells and Israeli retaliatory strikes, you also have an Egyptian-led process trying to reach some kind of lasting ceasefire. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that such a thing will happen. The question will always come down to, is there sufficient political will and political capital on both sides to make such a deal happen and make it last?
Okay.
And obviously there's a number of bodies outside of Israel and outside of Hamas that are interested in seeing that happen. Egypt, Qatar, and some other countries would be happy to help broker such a deal, sort of to up their status in the region and so on.
All right, Judah,
yeah.
you're there. I'm not there. American Jews are not where you are, and I argue all the time American Jews should have a certain degree of humility. So what I'm about to say to you, I say to you acknowledging that you have such far greater understanding. That's why I wanted you to speak today on JBS. Where were you born, Judah?
I was born in Philadelphia.
And you made Aliyah at some point in your life?
I made Aliyah in 2011, coming up on 7 years.
7 years. So as a young adult, you make Aliyah, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. From where we sit, and maybe it's not fair, from where I sit, I believe that if what you just described were possible, it would happen long ago. That if this was about money, this would be long over. I don't believe it's about money, and there are many Israelis who have convinced me by showing me what Hamas says, what Hamas does, what the PA says, what the PA does. I am convinced this is not about money, and that if it were, American Jews and Israelis would pump billions. They did, by the way, at one point, put billions of dollars into Gaza after the withdrawal in the hope that there would be some kind of beautiful society created in Gaza that would be wonderful for the indigenous Palestinian people there and would make some kind of coexistence. I agree with you, it may not ever be a peace, but it would be without hostility. Now, I don't believe that's what Hamas wants. Hamas has.
So I don't.
I'm almost done.
Yeah,
I have not
Sorry,
seen any Hamas statement that reflects what you hope. To me, that's a Jewish hope. That's a Jewish perspective. I desperately want there to be some way in which we can eliminate the conflict between Hamas and the Israeli people and Fatah and the PA. But I don't hear, I don't see any statement, any demand which Israel could respond to, and it's not about the Netanyahu government. It wouldn't matter what government was there. It wouldn't matter if Herzog had won in the last elections. The problem remains, Hamas is what you said it is. It is dedicated to the annihilation of the state of Israel, and what bothers Hamas is not Israeli policy, it's Israeli existence. So I'm asking you now, and again, I've given you my perspective, but you're there. I trust you much more than I would trust any American. But I want you to give me an example of something you've seen, something Hamas has said that suggests to you money would solve this problem.
So there, I want to have a little bit of contention. I'm not saying money is the solution to the problem. In terms of the Palestinian society, it's more a question of politics. And there's a ridiculous. I mean, we're talking about the conflict between Israel and Hamas, and in a lot of ways that doesn't hold a candle to the conflict between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, which has been a major driver in this current round of conflict, because the Palestinian Authority has been withholding money from from people in the Gaza Strip.
Yes.
Part of the reason why there's a major reason, if not the leading reason, why there's limited electricity in the Gaza Strip is because of the Palestinian Authority's actions.
Yes.
So when I'm saying that there's certain, economic incentives, that's not the economic incentives for their own right, but more that this would be a victory for Hamas over the Palestinian Authority, and that politics are more the driving force here rather than the money itself.
Okay.
I mean, obviously there's a huge amount of corruption going on. So,
yes.
People like the Hamas and the Palestinian Authority love money, but it's also about this ongoing sort of never-ending and really vicious political struggle between those two groups.
Okay, but Judah, are you...
But to respond more specifically to what you're saying, you're not going to find many Hamas officials saying, "Yeah, we can live with Israel." It's not going to happen. That's not the kind of thing that they say.
Why not?
But
why not?
Because they're a horrific terrorist organization that hates the state of Israel.
Okay, and you want to...
That is what they are. They define themselves as the resistance.
Yes.
So that is their defining characteristic.
Yes.
Of course. However, what has happened in these past years is that Hamas has been ruling the Gaza Strip, and they're doing a really bad job of it. The situation in that there is no... I don't think there are many Israelis that don't feel terrible for what's happening to the people, not Hamas, to the people who live in the Gaza Strip, because it's a miserable place to be.
Yes.
And that is starting to catch up to Hamas. And that is why there is this potential for some kind of breakthrough, because that's reaching a boil. That's a pressure cooker, and it's about to blow, is the view of many people. And that's why there's actually this possibility, because more than Hamas wants to destroy the state of Israel, Hamas wants to stay in power. And sometimes that means making deals with the devil, which in quotes I say, which in this case would be Israel. So maybe that is, so in that regard, yeah, if that's what it takes in order for them to still be here tomorrow, yeah, I don't put that outside the realm of possibility. That's what I mean by them being cynical and shrewd. They'll do what it takes to stick around, including making, quiet ceasefire deals with Israel.
Okay. One more question.
That to me is the main issue here, is that the one thing that Hamas has going for it in all of this is that they think that Israel doesn't want to get rid of them because Israel likes having them in place to run things in Gaza. And the second that starts to go away, then Hamas is losing the one real main serious card that it has. And I don't think they want to give up that card so soon.
Mm-hmm. Judah, how do Israelis feel about the way America and Western Europe has responded every time Hamas, this is not the first time, Hamas at one point threw 8,000 rockets into Israel. How do Israelis react to the way in which the West and Western Europe has a hard time siding with Israel anytime this kind of conflict begins?
I think that for some people it's just another foregone conclusion that Israel sort of lost this battle of for the public opinion and for the narrative. And for other people, for some people that's their job, and one of their motivating factors is to try to change that. I think for some people there's disappointment and just a feeling like they don't know what's going on here, so and that sort of sense of disappointment. And then for other people, it's proof that they're out to get us, that they are against us. I don't think, and then obviously there are some people who agree, people who are more, farther to the left in Israeli politics who agree with the negative portrayal of Israel and with, taking the Palestinian side. So I think there's those sort of three clear groups where there's one that uses it as sort of a way to attack the West and certain American politicians, not all of them, obviously, certainly not this administration. And there's some that sort of see this as a negative thing that Israel has to work to overcome, and others who agree with it and sort of jump on that bandwagon, so to speak.
Okay. One last question. I have about a minute left with you. It's hard to prognosticate, but your instinct, what do you believe is going to happen in the next day and days?
I really don't. I really try not to prognosticate, as you say, one of my favorite words.
I understand.
I think that the coming hours will be something of a deciding factor. I think the last strike that Israel did was a very clear, very explicit warning. You can't subtly misread that.
Yep.
And so the question will be, how serious does Hamas take that threat? And if they continue, then we'll see escalation. If things maintain, then okay, maybe we'll see a few more days of quiet, and we'll see how things progress from there. The problem is right now it's a tinderbox, and just the smallest misread of a situation by one side or the other can set it off again, and there's a whole new round. I mean, I'll remind you, this is the third major flare-up that we've seen in the past few months. So there's no reason for it to be outside the realm of possibility that even if things cool down tomorrow and the next day, that it could pick up again weeks from now.
Yes.
So that'll be, I think, decided in the coming hours. Fridays, typically you see protests along, you see violence along the border. So obviously that will be a major indicator of how things are going. And obviously throughout the rest of tonight. Already there have been a few minor, mortar shells and rockets fired, mostly not by Hamas, by these sort of more extreme radical Salafist groups, which Israel's not necessarily seeing as like a real violation of a ceasefire. But if there's always the possibility that one of those mortar shells, one of those rockets will hit someone or something, and then that, again, can just spark the whole round and cycle of violence all over again.
I understand. Judah, it is wonderful being able to talk to you, and I appreciate the nuance you bring to the discussion. I hope you will let us chase you, especially if this does not quiet down. But I wish you kol tuv v'hatzlacha, and we will speak again. Thank you for making time for us on JBS.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Be well. Judah, Ari Gross, military correspondent for the Times of Israel. My friends, from my perspective, there's no justification for Hamas engaging in a blatant act of war, firing more than 200 rockets into Israel. And fundamental decency and morality place a responsibility on all of us to speak out now in support of Israel and in condemnation of Hamas. And again, every Jewish leader, every Jewish media, and every rabbi should be supporting Israel unequivocally at this moment in time. As always, my thanks to our director, Sloan Copeland, editors John McDevitt, Liam Ahern, and Ben Greenfield, and the producers of this edition of In the News, Carol Lilienthal and Tisha Bader. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.